What's up, everybody? Welcome to Pillosphy. I am Senior Director Max Lyles at the Counseling Center. Got a couple guests here with me today. We're going to talk about a pretty unique program that is a historical staple of the Counseling Center, the Stepping Stones program. I am joined by current chairman of the board, former CEO Ed Hughes. Ed, welcome.
Good morning.
And current director of the Stepping Stones program, Stephanie Miller.
Good morning.
That's the married name. I'm still getting used to it. So if I call you Stephanie Thompson, everybody just bear with me. We're doing our best, right?
Okay.
So one of the first things I always like to do is just qualify you guys as the experts, and both of you know Stepping Stones very well. So Stephanie, ladies first, give us a little introduction, what you do and what you've done and how you got here in front of the camera.
So I'm the program director. I oversee the clinical operations of Stepping Stones for 2.5 and a 2.1 level of care.
Mm-hmm.
I oversee the housing of Stepping Stones because it's a unique program.
Sure.
I oversee the child care of Stepping Stones because, you know, we're doing it for the kids. We have to have
they
daycare
should do something for the
kids
after all, you know what I mean?
I've been with the agency for 10 years. I celebrated 10 years in January.
That's a decade, man.
Yeah, so I got here by walking up to Stepping Stones and
Literally.
2008.
Yeah.
Yes. Been in recovery since then.
Awesome.
And then RSS staff, case management, primary lead,
God,
coordinator.
you've done it all.
Now I'm the director.
Yeah. You going to talk about school a little bit or whatever? I always like to highlight people's credentials.
School.
You know,
so I just graduated with a BSW from Liberty University in December.
Shout out to all the social workers that are watching us out there.
Yes.
I hope you see this.
I have been accepted into University of Kentucky for my MSW Advanced Standing Program. I start that in August.
Cats.
Yes.
You want to tell the story about how you got signed up for your bachelor's degree?
So my lovely, amazing supervisor, Amy Gregory, decided to do everything except for fill out my FAFSA for me because I was in that contemplation stage. I have 4 kids at home. I wasn't 100% ready.
There's no way I could do this.
Hey, but she saw my potential.
And she said, no, you really should be
You're
going to
do this. So she made sure I moved into that action stage of change.
And then licensed with the Chemical Dependency Board currently?
Yes, I'm currently at LCDC 3 and pending exam for LSW.
Yeah, man.
Yes.
Congratulations.
Ultimate goal,
man.
LISWS.
You'll get there.
Yeah.
You'll get there. It just takes time and a little bit of suffering.
Just
You know
like
what I mean?
recovery. Takes time.
It takes time.
Yeah.
And maybe some suffering. I don't know. Appreciate it.
A lot of suffering.
And thanks for coming today. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Ed?
You may go all the way back.
Man, whatever you want. Whatever we can start at retirement and go up and talk about the board role, or whatever you want to do.
Well, I'm a
man.
graduate of High University and Western Kentucky University, and I spent 4 years in the military working as a counselor in a family education program, and then came back to Portsmouth. Back to Portsmouth, and from there worked my way from the Shawnee Mental Health Center to Children's Services to the Counseling Center in 1989.
Okay.
So,
and at that point, Counseling Center would have been 9 years old?
About that.
Yeah.
Yeah, they started off about 1980 with one counselor and a part-time secretary over on
big agency.
Yeah. Over on Hutchins Street, and Rembert Glass was the lead counselor and executive director at that time.
Yeah.
And I got to know Rem, and that's how my introduction to the Counseling Center began.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. And then from there, after you came to the Counseling Center, your role there throughout.
Yeah, I came to the Counseling Center in '89 as the executive director, and we started building a program from there. I brought a couple of friends with me that I had a lot of confidence in, Rick Calvin and Sue Shaw. And we had another legend that was there, Gary Logan, was at the Counseling Center already.
Yeah.
And so from there, we started trying to just build a program. And the rest is an amazing history.
Sure, yeah. So, from how many employees were there in 1989?
I was number 7.
Employee number 7. So then today we're talking 500 employees.
Yes, somewhere around that.
Total, three different counties of operation.
Mm-hmm. And has doubled in size since my retirement.
Wow.
So I just had to get out of the way and let everything go. And
Yeah.
they started growing again. So,
Sure. Yeah. I understand, man.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Tons of like history and context there. And that's some of the stuff we wanted to touch on. So the Stepping Stones program, and you hop in at any point in time and tell me if I'm like wrong or off base, as you're the pro. But what I know about the Stepping Stones program serves pregnant women and mothers with children up to 12 years old.
Correct.
And that is in multiple levels of care, provides safe and supportive housing, supervised housing 24 hours a day in some spots, and then 24-hour around-the-clock support just kind of all the time based on the special population that they've got. How did we get the age of 12? Where did that come from?
You know, I have no idea. Actually, we were in 1989 and 90, when I first came to the counseling center, the state was going through a reorganization.
Sure.
And they created the Ohio Department of Alcohol and Drug Addiction Services,
Yeah.
which was a combination of the Department of Health's alcohol money and the Department of Mental Health's drug money.
Sure.
Before that, those two pots of money were separate. So they put those together, created a new department, and they hired a woman by the name of Lucille Fleming, who came from Pennsylvania, who had an enormous history and successful history in developing women's programming. Okay. So she came to Ohio as the first director, and we all trotted up to Columbus to hear her first presentation.
Yeah.
And what her goals were for that department. And she spent a lot of time talking about women's residential programming, which it did exist in Pennsylvania, did not exist much in Ohio. And so she talked about the importance of women being able to bring children, especially pregnant women, being able to come into treatment, having a safe environment to be able to have their child and be able to continue in treatment. So we were just listening to all of that.
Yeah.
And somewhere in there, you know, we thought, well, if we're going to have women bring their kids into care, we need to extend that age beyond just infants, because that's all that really existed in Ohio.
Right.
A couple of programs.
Yeah.
And somebody said 12, and we wrote it down on a piece of paper.
There it is, dude, and it's still in existence today, right?
It is, and what we see after the age of 12 is the kiddos start to get a little bit more mature.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, and with that, daycare's not so fun.
I got you.
But then they're going into junior high school.
Yeah.
TCC still offers counseling for children over the age of 12.
Yeah, absolutely.
We just have to have that cutoff at Stepping Stones at 12 seems to be still a pretty good age.
It's one of those like classic counseling center stories of like, well, we have to do something and we have to set a number. And it's like, well, we'll start at 12, and if that doesn't work, we'll work backwards. We'll go 11, 10, 9. But it's like, that's worked out, so we just continue.
We've had people from all over, actually a multi-state area, come to see Stepping Stone House because they could not understand how we serve kids that could walk.
Right.
You know, and the services that we had to provide. You know, which would be childcare and transportation. We had to have a relationship with the school district for the kids to go to school. Portsmouth City Schools never really balked at all in terms of our kids coming. We had to work with them in terms of understanding that our kids may not complete the school year or may come in the middle of the school year. Yeah. But again, they accommodated our children very well. It was just one of those community experiences that we had a number of times where, you know, Portsmouth or Scioto County embraced what we were trying to do. Yeah. And we didn't know that it was a unique thing until we talked to people outside the area that said, well, we can't find a school district that's willing to work with our kids, and we don't know how to provide childcare. And it's like, well, we didn't know any better.
Sure. Yeah. So we just tried, right? We just try. Yeah. So from the kind of to go back and forth before we get into sort of how Stepping Stones came to be and what that process looked like, why is Stepping Stones important for, you know, because it is like, you know, this lady talking about at the state level, pregnant women accessing services, women with children being able to access services, like reducing those barriers. Why is that important for people, like in a right now kind of perspective?
So the children need to recover right along with the mom. They live the lifestyle of addiction right beside mom. Mom may not have had a role model to show her how to parent. the best learning is hands-on.
Yeah.
So we're allowing mom to have her child with her so they can learn how to take care of the child appropriately to not get a CPS case.
Right.
To learn the skills that they need, daily living skills, how to pack a diaper bag to get ready for work. We want to set them up for success.
Sure.
And
under
part of that-
supervision, like to help them, right?
Yes, because if we see that there is a concern, we are there on site 24/7 to be able to intervene.
Right.
We're mandated reporters. Like if we feel like that has to happen, then they're there under our supervision to be able to help them.
Yeah.
Our goal is not to do that, but we want to make sure that they're successful in the parenting and their kids recover right along with them.
Yeah, and that's like at the end of the day, it's just like it's something that needs done. It's like they're like you talk about a vulnerable population, like a female with children that needs access to services. It's like if that doesn't like check the box of like, okay, well those people get treatment. I don't really know what does,
Well, the issue that we were seeing is that when I came to the counseling center, 90% of our client population were male.
Yeah. And that's flip-flopped a couple times through history?
Well, it flipped after Stepping Stone House
Yeah.
and after the outpatient and aftercare services started.
Sure.
But what we found was when we started looking into why is that the case is that the first issue was stigma, that women were experiencing a level of stigma that was beyond even men.
Sure.
Oftentimes families even being rejecting of a woman who was experiencing alcoholism or drug addiction. But then the second barrier was what to do with the children.
Yeah.
Because more than half of the women that we were trying to serve were doing it as a single parent.
Yeah.
So the idea at that time, what was happening all over the state of Ohio is if a woman came into treatment, first of all, she came into treatment very far progressed in her addiction because to come into treatment, she would have to give up her children to Child Protective Services, which meant a whole process of trying to accommodate their requirements
Sure.
and maybe or maybe not being able to get your children back in a timely way.
Yeah.
And so, the idea of kids being able to come into treatment with their mothers solved two of those problems,
Yeah.
for us. Plus, in a rural area, outpatient services don't work very well.
Yeah.
Somebody
Yeah.
with anybody, but especially if they're dealing with children,
Oh, yeah.
being able to come to outpatient services on a regular basis just doesn't work. So housing was the other issue that was high on the list.
And housing solves like the transportation issue because they're here. It
Yes.
solves the child care issue because the child's there. It checks
Yes.
a lot of those other
It
boxes off
solves
too.
the problem in terms of people getting health care.
Yeah.
It solves problems of the children attending school.
Yeah. Yeah. So then talk about, so we've heard about these women's programs in another state. We've got this idea of how it might work. We're not scared to try. We know we're not scared to try school and other things, So talk about that story of how Stepping Stones came to be, how the counseling center formed that program.
Well, the state, under Lucille Fleming, one of the very first things they did is they set aside some of the funding that came to the Ohio Department of Alcohol and Drug Addiction Services. They call
Yeah.
it Women's Set Aside, and they created a grant program.
Okay.
And that grant program then went out as an RFP, a request for
Yeah.
proposals all across the state. And we were interested
Sure.
in that. The issue that we faced is that Scioto County, total population of about 82,000, total child population of under about 20,000. We were concerned that we didn't match up very well competitively.
Yeah, because there's other places applying,
Like
correct?
Franklin County, Toledo, Cincinnati, Cleveland, these bigger agencies
And
were
so
all
then
lining
from
up
a-
for that funding.
And so then from a state perspective and a funding perspective, just like it's from the state's view, they want to put that money where it's going to have the broadest impact.
Yeah, if they're going to fund, because it costs us, there's a certain base amount that it costs to create a residential program.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so it's the question they're asking is that we're going to spend this money to create a program, and how many people are you going to serve?
Right.
And that's where we were concerned
Right.
that, well, we're going to serve maybe 100 people a year, and these other programs are talking much bigger numbers.
Sure.
So at that point, it was decided that we would approach other counties in our region So we created a 10-county regional program.
Okay.
So the actual name of the grant was the Multi-County Regional Women's Residential Program.
Okay.
And it included 10 counties in our vicinity here. And we went to each of those counties and talked to the agencies, the outpatient agencies that serve those counties.
Sure.
Talked to the courts, talked to the children's service agencies, and we got their support. That was probably the hardest thing about the grant itself,
I
was
bet.
having to do face-to-face conversations in all those counties.
I bet.
Explain to them what we were doing and how they could benefit.
Mm-hmm.
And so we put that proposal together, and at that point, we became competitive with all those other programs.
It's so interesting in that comparison too, just to talk about the idea of being able to create a program to impact a region,
Yes.
like a rural region, because especially with like current climate of, treatment within the city of Portsmouth, and then in other cities too, Covington, Kentucky, Morgantown, West Virginia, with those sorts of narratives going on, and the the access to treatment talk and the number of treatment centers and that sort of like both sides of that coin and the back and forth. Resources aren't spread out evenly across the state for everybody.
Right.
You can't just access everything, and the easiest way to for me to explain it to a person that doesn't know anything about alcohol and drug treatment is there's not a Starbucks in every town. Sometimes you have to go somewhere else to get your Starbucks.
Yes.
Or
Right.
it's like part of your going to this place is like, oh, they got a Starbucks here. We're going to get a Starbucks, something off the menu or on the menu maybe. But
Well, if this wasn't a regional program, none of it would exist.
right.
Because there would not be, enough to support that. If you were just talking about Scioto County,
Sure.
or Adams County, or Lawrence, or any of these counties that we serve,
Rural Appalachia.
yeah, it would, again, you would be talking about small outpatient programs that would serve a very small number of people in terms of the continuum of care.
Sure.
So we were able to essentially, through the regional concept, be able to say we can have the same kind of program that would exist in a larger community.
Yeah.
But we got to serve a geographic area.
I got you.
Not a county or a city incorporated or county line. And the same would hold true for a lot of businesses in our area. I mean, think of a number of businesses and say, well, how successful would this business be if they only serve people from Portsmouth?
Yeah. Sure.
Or just Scioto County.
Right.
And again, a lot of what we have locally is because we are able to attract people from a region,
Yeah.
not some defined geographic area.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and then you hear a lot of people talk about the region, just southeastern Ohio, generally.
Yes.
It's just kind of how it's summed up, southeastern Ohio.
And the bottom line would be is that if I'm a parent, I have a loved one that lives in another county and they need treatment, I'm
Sure.
going to be pretty upset if somebody says, well, they're not from Scioto County.
Sure. Yeah. Well, and people locally do this all the time. I'm going to Columbus for my health care. I'm going to Cincinnati for my health care. I'm going to Cleveland for my health care, just because they feel like they're getting a better service at those places.
Where the specialists are.
Right. Right.
We're the specialists.
Yeah. That's an anomaly that the specialists are here now, and that
or
other people are coming here.
Or they're able to walk in one door and get all the services that they need. They don't have to have that fragmented.
Right.
And that's what exists in a number of counties. Actually, the state of Ohio passed a law that every alcohol, drug addiction, and mental health services board should follow the counseling center model.
Yeah.
And that means that within your community, you need to have every service within the continuum of care that is necessary for that person. Either you provide that as an agency or you provide it through arrangement
Sure.
with another
Yeah.
agency.
Sure.
And that came as a result of legislators looking at the TCC model of having this comprehensive program.
Sure.
And now I don't know if that ever has developed much around the rest of the state, but that exists as a law.
Yeah, yeah. So then to take a step over, right? So we introduce you as Stephanie Miller, Program Director, Education Credentials, supervision of like so many things. You named off like 10 things that you're in charge of, supervisor or whatever. But that's not how you got introduced to Stepping Stones. You talked about showing up on the steps at the big house in 2008, right? talk about how this program exists now. By the time you had gotten to the point like where, okay, I need to do something, it's been going on a while. It formed in mid-90s, 95?
92.
92, okay.
So, you know, I'm a recovering addict. I grew up in the lifestyle of addiction because of my parents. That's what I knew. It's what I followed to alleviate mental health symptoms. And I didn't know that at the time.
Right.
But here I had this little 2-year-old that I was dragging around through my addiction. And I'm going to be honest, like, I always wanted to be a mom because my parents had abandoned me, but I wanted someone to love me unconditionally. And she did, man. She loved me unconditionally with her little curly pigtails.
Yeah.
But I wasn't sure I loved her. She was a nuisance. She got in the way of me getting drugs and living the lifestyle that I really wanted to live at that time.
Too much personal responsibility, you know?
Yes.
Yeah.
Then I got into some criminal trouble, and my daughter's grandmother worked at Stepping Stones and was a house mom for 20 years at that point.
House mom.
And she called and got me put on the list, and 2 weeks later, they're like, hey, you got a bed with your daughter.
Oh, wow.
You know, I didn't know I wanted to parent her, but I surely wanted to make sure that I looked good and looked like a good parent. So I rolled up to Stepping Stones and took her with me. And
I wanted to make sure I looked like a parent and that I looked good. Man, I love it, dude.
After the withdrawals happened, I realized that I really did love this little girl. And I didn't want to stay there. I tried to leave, but she was my driving force at that point.
Yeah, I got you.
And then I realized I wanted it for myself. So I ended up going to transitional, court ordered, by the way, not willingly, with my 2-year-old who actually recovered right along with me.
Yeah,
She
for
realized
sure.
Mom was coming back when she went to daycare to pick her up every single day. When I went to work, she knew I was coming back. I then went to college and was about to graduate, had a recovery baby. And I was like, man, I went to college for this, so why not go back where it all started?
Right.
And they hired me.
Yeah.
So, you know, I wanted to give back what was given to me, and parenting's hard in general.
Right.
Add early recovery.
Oh, yeah.
And I lived it. I wanted to help these mommies know that there's hope and that they can do it the same as what I did, and multiple other moms that are alumni of Stepping Stones have.
And that's, so then like for you personally, and then for like all the other families that have been positively impacted by the Stepping Stones program, and it's a lot of them.
Yes.
Right. It's a lot of them. What's their world? What your world? What's that look like without Stepping Stones? Like what happens to people's lives without Stepping Stones in existence?
Well, I wouldn't have been a mother anymore. I would have lost her. I had already had CPS cases because of my drug addiction. I was on that final straw. So either my addiction would have done something horrible to her, or I would have lost all hope, and CPS would have taken her. So she would have been one of those other children in foster care, again, because my family were all using. They wouldn't have been able to care for her and take care of her. I wouldn't have been able to learn how to parent, cook, clean without that. I wouldn't have learned the importance of taking my daughter to a pediatrician versus urgent care or ER. So then I would have charged more money to the state of Ohio because I was living off of Medicaid. I no longer have to live off of Medicaid or food assistance because of that program. They taught me the skills I needed to, even though I had a criminal background, to gain employment and become a productive member of society.
Yeah.
Without Stepping Stones, that would never have been a thing.
Yeah. And then you multiply that by, you're up to how many clean, drug-free babies at this point?
We just had one born yesterday, so we're at 359.
Dude, that's so crazy.
Yes, 359. We didn't start tracking until 2009.
Oh, my
So that's in
God.
just that little amount of time.
So that's in the 13-year period.
Yes.
It's 359.
Yes.
You got any ballparks for the early days or anything?
No, it started off kind of slow in terms of the pregnant women. It took us a while to learn how to engage child protective services, pediatricians, how to get the word out to people. So it was probably a couple of years into the life of the program that we started seeing pregnant women making their way, to our program.
Gosh. Well, hey, congratulations on 359, man. That's
an amazing. Another thing about that number for people who are concerned about, the cost of addiction and the like is that, any 2 or 3 of those babies per year would have cost the system as much as all Stepping Stone House costs.
wow.
because there are, $1 million costs sometimes associated with babies that are born affected by their drug, by drug addiction, and
Times 359.
times 359.
Right.
Yeah. That it is a tremendous cost saving in and of itself, just in terms of babies being born healthy and well and not needing, NICU or not needing additional, care beyond, beyond their birth, which is the vast majority of the babies that are born to women who are staying at Stepping Stone House. And a big shout out to the people at the SOMC because they have embraced our families, have come and done education programs for for our families, help women to understand what the whole birthing process was going to be like and what was going to happen after, and connections to pediatricians instead of urgent care.
Yeah.
So we've really experienced tremendous amount of cooperation. Again, another one of those examples of where this community historically has embraced the services that we provide, and families have tremendously benefited from that.
We have maternity work group. We meet once a month with SOMC Maternity and SOMC Peds to collaborate services together and make sure that we are communicating across the board to, one, make our moms feel comfortable. They allow us to come tour the maternity floor so our moms know what to expect when they're going in there.
Right.
And then that way they also feel like they're not being judged. Yeah, that's a big thing. They're fearful of that judgment and the stigma that's been placed on them all these years. So that kind of helps alleviate some stress and fears that they have.
Absolutely.